All right, what's up, everyone? It's been a while. We have some work to do. So, last time I actually put out content, I streamed last week on Twitch, and you got a little sneak peek of what was to come on the channel, and we'll quickly go over that real quick. But first, I want to show you what this guy's doing. This piece of shit who is upset that I'm not getting enough content out. Check it out. Let me pull something up for you guys. So check this out. There's a live letter coming out next week, or not next week, the 18th, next month. It's going to display the battle changes and probably the job trailer. But if you remember from the last time, I showed you a couple of leaked text messages that a certain dev, sent me. It seems that their development team, they're chilling, right? They need some help. They were reaching out to me, and I said, all right, I'll help out. But he wants to apply the pressure and post on Reddit, the home of the casuals, that there's a live letter coming up, reminding them and reminding me that I better get something out, or else I'm going to disappoint all my boys. And I can't have that. So I was starting to make the video. I even put together a cool PowerPoint, dictating skills that I thought were nice, not nice, things I wanted to change, things I wanted to add, just to, give a bunch of ideas for the team to work on. However, I saw something on Twitter yesterday. One of the 14 greats to do it up, Momo-sama, he put out a tier list, and he went over every job in its existence throughout the game's life history, minus A Realm Reborn, of course, because nobody plays that shit. But he went from pretty much top of the tower to the bottom, describing which jobs were the best, which jobs sucked, which were pretty smooth brain, and of course you got to have your dedicated monk tiers. And now quickly, if we take a glance at it, it looks pretty good, I would say, from a person who enjoys job complexity and functionality. Let's take a quick scan and see any ones I want to shout out in particular. Heavensward Warrior was my baby. It was my introduction to the game, so I would put it in heaven, of course. But it being an A tiers also makes sense. Shadowbringer's White Mage, best White Mage to ever do it. It's gonna be even better. It's gonna have 2 lilies next expansion. Heavensward Machinist also very dope. If anyone knows me, I got a problem with this Black Mage up here, even though it is the best it's ever been. But I got a problem with Black Mage. And I hate Bard, but Bard in Stormblood was the shit. Anything else? The middle ones are good. I know people have issues with Dark Knight. I'm gonna talk about that when we get to the next part of this video. Boring. Oh, big agree. Physical range. Rip. Don't fuck with Summoner. Piece of shit job. Shoutouts to Heavensward Paladin. But yeah, if you wanted to see him create this tier list for what his opinions were, it's on his Twitch channel. Twitch channel is right here, twitch.tv/FFXIV Momo. You can hear his thoughts. But since he analyzed the jobs from a competent player POV, which includes doing Party Finder, raiding in Savage, doing progression, and overall game feel. I wanted to take the challenge and do it myself. However, instead of addressing all those great points, I want to address the day-to-day. You log in, you have some duty roulettes to do, you're hitting that queue up button, and you're getting partnered with the demons of Duty Finder, my boys. We're gonna do the same exact thing. We're gonna run through all the jobs. Shit. Maybe I should have organized this before we started. That's fine. You guys can give me a second. Now, you see, if I was an editor boy, there would be some sort of speed up compilation. But if you're hearing this, you already know what happened. I am not an editor boy. Obligatory dancer has been left out. I thought it was pretty funny because, you know, that job is also relatively smooth like the other range. But we'll talk about dancer at the very end. I don't think it's as bad as some of these other jobs, but it is physical range, so what are you gonna do? The exciting part is I wanted to maybe do this off stream. Well, I am doing it off stream. I meant doing it without the video first and then talking about it after I created it. But I think it's more fun to catch the first time I'm thinking about where they need to go, right? Oh, also let me maybe make this bigger, right? What else are we missing? Oh, we need to do the rest of them, right? There's a black mage somewhere. Cool. There's only 3 casters. Machinist. Bard. Come on. Wait, where'd it go? Oh. Here we go. Sure, we could do Dragoon now. Ninja. As you know, on this channel, we only do one take. We don't make mistakes here. The process is part of the experience. Oh, I forgot a tank. Alright, that looks good. Everyone's in order. Alright, sweet. So yeah. So again, this is going to be, first off, my opinion. And secondly, it is of the floor. How people will normally play with their imperfections and everything. You know, the bard's not stacking, the paladin's not using CDs, you know, that kind of thing. What you're going to deal with and complain about as you're capping tombstones. All right. Heaven's Word Paladin. We're going to, before we even start, we're going to just put this sword bat for later. Because we can get creative with whatever's going down there. And first, Paladin. This job is ass. I'm pretty sure they didn't know what they were doing when they let this shit pass QA. I don't even think they had QA at that point. They probably just had a guy look at it at the list and was like, yeah, you know, we got a magic tank, we need a physical one, right? Let's secretly make the game all magic damage. Paladins also only have like 2 CDs, and hollowed at this time they were ass. We're not gonna spend too much time talking about it. Stormblood Paladin though, pretty juicy, right? They finally got some well-needed adjustments. Sheltron was pretty good, even though it had it in Heavensward. Now it's a lot better. Did they have an AoE rotation? I don't recall. I don't think they did at this point. So they were still pretty shit. You know, those paladins that would always pop all their CDs before running into a boss fight in Cutter's Cry? That man's still playing 4 years down the line. He's in Stormblood. He hasn't learned a single fucking thing. But his job does a lot of damage. Fucking Holy Spirit, when that shit came out, that shit was like 420 potency. It was Fell Cleave. It was awesome. And Hollow Ground, of course, best CD in the game. Not really, but it's a really good brain dead CD. Obligatory, don't need to talk about it. This job's broken. It's perfect. You can't fuck it up. The tank balancing for Shadowbringers was so good at bringing the floor up. They just do infinite damage. The floor is as low as you want to go with this job. The only complaint I could see there being is button bloat. Paladin has a lot of buttons, but again, we're talking about the floor, so people are just going to pick whatever buttons they like and they're going to press them. And since Paladin only has like 2 to 3 big chunky CDs, the floor can handle it pretty well. I'm not going to spend too much time on the Paladin, but yeah, it's the best. Heavensward Warrior, this is my baby. This is my introduction to the game. It taught me how to eat the crayons. It did it all. And the job, in my opinion, is probably the best beginner tank because it does everything so well. Especially in its progression throughout the expansions. In Heavensward, it got, of course, Fell Cleave and Decimate, so you're doing the big damage. Equilibrium, amazing self-heal. It's pretty much the clemency that you can use and look cool at the lunch table versus the actual clemency that people use and don't look cool at the lunch table. This job just did it all. It was at a league of its own in Heavensward. Shadowbringers, I'll put it in A. There were 2 iterations of this. The first one being the more difficult, you know, divide your gauge by 2 every time you switch stances. This was terrible for the floor. Absolutely garbage. Way too hard for the people that play tank and roulette, which is fine. They definitely did change it to the dumbed down version that we have now, which is also great. Don't get me wrong. It plays exactly like it should for the floor. My big button, I work towards it, and then I have a big button I press every 90 seconds to do more big button. Awesome. Shadowbringers is kind of the same. I have to be careful here, right? Because I need to make sure I'm focusing more on the floor rather than my personal opinion. Because it's very easy to blur the two. I know Momo had his little thing on the side that said that only one job could be in S tier. Which makes sense, right? No, it doesn't. Oh, well, for what he was aiming for, right? The pinnacle, what he called it. But we're not calling it pinnacle here. We're just calling it S tier. As Shadowbringers Warrior, S tier job. Once again, it does everything. It does the damage, it does the healing. It's got everything. Shadowbringers for tanks in general, like I said with Paladin, just brought the floor up so much because there was no need to use a brain cell, you know? You just press things as they light up and mash your CDs on whenever they came up. And Warrior had a built-in big number button every 90 seconds. It's great. How could I hate it? This job. The big problem with Heavensward Dark Knight when it first came out, well, there are many problems. I think the first and foremost problem was that it was a new job, right? And it was a new expansion. Heavensward is where they turned the formula on its head for difficulty's sake and pretty much set the template for what we're dealing with now. A lot of these jobs are just quality of life forms of their Heavensward renditions. For Dark Knight, they had a bunch of baby CDs, and we were still at a time where armor could be equipped by just Disciples of War or Disciples of Magic. So you would have these players who would just equip melee based gear with no armor, and they would be getting shredded in places like Brave Locks and Cutter's Cry and Stone Vigil. And they pretty much developed a good reputation for being paper tanks at that time. Very hard job too. I would probably say one of the hardest jobs in 14's lifespan thus far, with how high you could go in terms of optimization and how punishing it was when you made a mistake. You know, things like running out of mana so you lost Dark Side and whatnot. It is very complicated. The fact that we're still talking about it and we haven't even spoken about why it's sitting in C tier directly should let you know that this was too much for the people. This job needed to be brought down a couple of notches, brought down to the floor. And they did a good job with that in Stormblood, right? I think I'd put it here, B. It definitely doesn't chill with Paladin and Warrior from Stormblood, but it was starting to come into its own. It still had Abyssal Drain usage, which is great because that button, spamming that in dungeons felt really good. And I think for the most part, when you have big fun buttons like that, the floor will take they'll take note of it. And I definitely saw my fair share of shit tanks, but also a relatively big number of good tanks who knew that Abyssal Drain was the shit and they spammed the hell out of it in dungeons and stuff like that. This job has a bit of problems, but again, since we're focusing mostly on how other people perform on a day-to-day, this is where it sits for now. Now, Shadowbringers Dark Knight, I think, is a solid A tier. Outside of its questionable choices of identity, it's very simple to play, right? Even though it has 2 gauges on the job menu, there's really only one, because you keep up Dark Side all the time. If you're losing Dark Side, then you're below the floor. Or probably don't even know the button exists, because that could be the only reason I see as to why you would not press any of them. This job has 1 combo. This job has It has inner release in the form of Delirium, which is the warrior burst window. So you're just slinging Dark Knight Fell Cleaves and Dark Knight Decimates. CDs were normalized. I forgot to talk about TBN and Stormblood, but it was pretty good, I would say. The second rendition, the first one where the bubble will only last 5 seconds, trash. Second one though, where it lasted 7 seconds, good enough. You know, we're not going to talk about like risk versus reward of losing the mana if it didn't pop, because again, the floor is just pressing a button. They're pressing this on themselves, and they're now a lot tankier. Same here, same skill, nothing changed about it. And by the time we got to this point too in the expansion, I think it's a good thing to note that while the jobs got easier, and they certainly did, there's no doubt about it, the player base as a whole also got slightly better. You know, I think from suffering at the earlier stages of the game's life to now where they've sort of matured, and by mature it's like, you know, 30 minutes after struggling, there is some sense of value at what's good. And maybe that is more so because we remove things like tank stance and damage penalty in tank stance and homogenized a lot of buttons so that things are relatively similar across the board for the roles, right? The tanks all have a damage function. Dark Knights especially have very similar ties to warrior. So your brain doesn't have to focus on 4 separate jobs. It just focuses on one role set of functions, such as spammable AoE, spammable gauge AoE, single target, and so forth. But yeah, back to Dark Knight. It's great. Great tank for the floor. Very powerful. Has a nice aesthetic. Can burst whenever. It's good. I like it for the floor. I'm a big fan. I don't think it's the best it could ever be, because it is missing just a few more things to make it stand out, to the point where I think other renditions of this job might not be as great. Now, for Gunbreaker, they're an amazing job. Like, absolutely amazing. If I was just rating it on how good the job is, it would be S tier, no doubt. But it kind of has similar problems to the beginnings of Heavensward Dark Knight, right? Where it has a bunch of small CDs and you can die pretty easily. I actually don't think that's true. But whenever I played with Dark Knights, it reminded me of those tanks in Brave Flocks with the melee gear just absolutely getting shredded by a floor pull. But it is very powerful and it's very cool looking. And as a result, I think it also makes people want to learn how to play the job better. Also, by the time Shadowbringers comes around, people are very well in their mind about understanding what role they want to play. If they want to play a new tank or a tank in general, you know, they have four to pick from and a number of years to look at what those jobs were doing in their roulettes. You know, say a bard wanted to be a gunbreaker this in Shadowbringers, they're like, you know, all the tanks before, I got an idea about what I want to do, so I'm gonna hop in. And that's great, because they didn't have that thought in Heavensward. You know, they were just shooting and then bitching about being a caster. But we'll get to the range soon. I'm gonna leave it in A for now. I think Gunbreaker's very strong, and the tanks in general, as you can see for the Shadowbringers tanks in general, they're all hovering between S and A. They were just well thought out. I think tank overall was the best role for the floor because of how easy it is to achieve an average experience on the job. I think this button, like Paladin, has a lot of... Sorry, this button. I think this job, like Paladin, has a lot of buttons and may lose some in the future for simplicity's sake. However, assuming all things remain the same, I'm gonna keep it at A. We're not gonna talk about that now. Actually, no, we'll talk about it. So, again, I'm confusing my true feelings for what the floor feelings are. White Mage was okay. It's got Holy, I think, and it got a size and the bubble, Asylum, the A's. So with those, I mean, it's always had Holy, but with the size and Asylum, these guys were the kings of just, drop something, press something, and heals were going out. Right? We're also in the world of cleric stance, and quite frankly, it's hard to talk about healers in general at this time because there were still, like there is now, healers that don't want to DPS. The healers that did DPS though, Holy was a godsend because stun. You can't beat that in terms of mitigation for the party. Just less damage going out when everyone's stunned. I think a DPS White Mage would be B tier, but a White Mage that only healed would be like here. But that's the problem, right? If we assume all the healers are just not DPSing, then they end up here. I'm gonna put it in C. If they DPS, that was great. Even if they didn't, it still had access to Medica 2, Asylum, Tetra. Had great healing tools that it got. The loss of Cleric Stance made it so that you could do more damage. And White Mage's gauge system was shit. You didn't think about it at all. I don't even want to talk about it to have it shit on record of it ever existing. God. This is such a floor healer. It's amazing for what it can do. The Lily system that got revamped made it so that you had 3 GCD heals that were huge and allowed you to move. Now this didn't really affect the day-to-day people too much, right? Because they're not really thinking about rolling their GCD all the time. But because they have these tools and they want to use them, and they have a pretty little flower gauge that tells them they need to use them, they'll do it naturally. That's a big part of encouraging the floor to play, right? You give them a shiny toy, or you give them something that looks cool. And the Blood Lily, when you use 3 of those regular lilies, looks great. It's a giant red flower. Amazing. And it did a bunch of damage. Heavensward Healer, oh my god, this job was insane. I would put it here if we were just judging on my personal opinion versus the floor. I'll put it at A. This was a great healer. It had a ton of dots. It had old school Bane. If you ever had a scholar in your dungeon that knew how to press that Bane button, that's an instant 3 comms. Shields were great. I don't remember too much about the pets at that time, but you know, the memes of Eos solo healing everything definitely got more true as the patches went on and eye level went up, right? So even if the scholars themselves weren't good, they had an AI that was just slinging heals and carrying them. I would also put Stormblood Scholar here in A. It got some fancy new tools. And I think even for the floor standards, the people who picked up Scholar, they consider themselves to have a brain, right? Because there's a lot of, oh man, me shield, me thing. Damage was okay. Why is this playing? Sorry about that. Yeah, this job did a lot of damage too. This job sucks. I think the floor has slowly realized that too. With a lot of clunkiness to this job, it lost a lot of its power tools coming to this point, and it struggled even in the beginning. Adlo cost an absurd amount of MP, and usually leveling for Scholar the first time around is rough on every expansion, just because of the lower thresholds on substats. So you're critting less in general. So your shields aren't that big, right? And mana problems are typically a problem at the beginning because of that reason. People just want to blast and press their buttons, but the game won't let them. Yeah, I can't think too much merit of Shadowbringer Scholars. I mean, they still do a lot of damage. I might move it up. I'm just really lingering on release Scholar for 5.0. Not to mention its current state, which I think is probably the worst Scholar has ever been in the game. Seraph is very clunky. Actually, you know, fuck that, yeah. Fuck Sarah. Alright, this job. Prefix in Midas. So, on release and into 2.1, 2.2. This job sucked. But it did have the cool card system, and by cool I mean, yeah, it felt like you really had a choice when you were slinging cards. You troll the shit out of your melees by giving them arrows, make them run out of TP. Heals were alright. Diurnal and Nocturnal. I don't know, this job has always been plagued with balance issues. It's not Paladin bad, but it was pretty rough. Seeing an Asher was never a good thing until it got buffed. And then it was pretty sweet to see them. They also had very cool, flashy, celestial animations. So, you know, people that were playing this job were definitely going for the look. Overall, since it spent most of its Heavensward life getting buffed rather than the abysmal state it was on release, I'll put it in C. This job was sick. I mean, still, we were just, you know, sleeve draw was great back then versus now, whatever the hell it is now. It was just pretty powerful, and I think pretty fun to play too. Still having that older card system of the 6 buffs made you feel powerful, right? People who played Astro back then too, they definitely knew they were playing Astro for Astro, and I think because they were wanting to play the job for its look and its name, the players, from my experience, had a better understanding of the job. There were still shitty Astros, don't get me wrong. There's like a shitty version of every job that you might play with in your roulettes. But overall, I have fond thoughts of Astro in Stormblood. This job is very powerful. Don't get me wrong. That's not why it's sitting in C to D tier though. This job fucking sucks to play. I hate this job. The revamped card systems are ass. The divination seal system that they changed so that you have like some, you know, nice buff going out, ass. It's not fun, right? And this is a huge personal bias. I don't think the Astro card system is fun at all right now. Even when you succeed in getting your 3 seals and you get the fat full divination, it doesn't feel fun. The heals are powerful. This job never runs out of mana. But because what it excels at is how to say this? It excels when you understand the whole job, right? It's not like White Mage where you don't really have to understand it. You can just, you know, spam your lilies on CD, you know, the moment the tank takes damage, drop a Medica 2. This job will do everything for you with like 4 buttons. This job, Astro, probably does the same thing, but I've never seen it. If my Astro sucks, they are trash. They're not doing a single thing. But if they're doing well, you kind of don't notice it either, right? Because White Mage can stun. Scholar. Where did I put Scholar? Oh, here. Scholar, I mean, you kind of like don't take damage, but it's not stunning like White Mage, so. Yeah. And Astro also can't stun. And it needs to stand in the middle of mobs in order to AoE them with gravity, which is like a danger zone for the average player who cannot dodge AoEs or who can't even be asked to do that because it's a lot of work to be weaving in and out, doing damage, and also looking at the tank's HP. I'm kind of capping for them though by saying that it shouldn't be that hard. It's the bare minimum in order to play this fucking game. Nah, I'll put it in C. I don't really have a role for D yet. Maybe it'll be one of the custom slots that some of these Forsaken jobs will end up in. But that's where it goes for now. We can finally move on to some DPS. Heavensward Summoner, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't spend much time playing this. I didn't like pets. I still don't like pets. I think pets are dumb in this game. They are handled very poorly overall. But you could also have pets on sick. So you would have things like pets running off and attacking mobs. I mean, you put up dots and you bane them. Dots are a floor killer because they're not fun to press, even though they do a lot of damage. And I mean that in terms of, like, you know, big shiny ability, right? You put a couple of green bubbles and a purple smog, and then you spread them. That doesn't sound exciting for Timmy, who is just showing up and wanting to blast, right? But the job was good, I think. It has res, you know, so if you have a caster that is so desperate to want to join your team, at least you know when the healer wipes, there's a potential to save the run. Yeah, I'll leave it in B for now. It's okay. This job got Bahamut. I think after 2 expansions, the people that remained on Summoner stayed there for the dots, right? And Garuda management and all that bullshit. Ironically, I think this job at the floor level spent a lot of time at least acknowledging that those tough aspects that really make Summoner shine exist. Sort of like the shit, what job was I talking about before? It was like with the tanks, right? Like by the time you got to Shadowbringers, you knew you wanted a tank, so you had an idea of what you were doing. I think that plays the same role with Summoner. So I'll leave it at A for now. Bahamut was also really cool, even though he was janky. Pets are still really shit and janky. Yeah. We're gonna talk about this job later because I fucking hate this. I hate what you became. And I hate that people like it. It's very powerful. I'm not gonna slight it that way. However, this is a very unenjoyable job that only really gets talked about, I feel, because it does a lot of damage. That's it. Let's see, Red Mage. Red Mage is powerful. They have a huge bunch of problems, but for what they did for the player base, I mean, it's the people's champ of DPS, right? People love talking about how easy Red Mage is. I can't even doubt it. Except when they don't AoE in dungeons. Then the job's like, what are you doing? Yeah, no. S is a very prestigious rank. Like, you can't fuck it up. Yeah. So A is where it's at. I think same thing for Shadowbringers Red Mage. It didn't really change too much on the original formula, just gave you more oomph. in your skills. Double raising, like this is, you pull up in a 24 mana as a red mage, you're getting 3 comms. That's it. Black mage. It's a good job. It's powerful. Milking system was one of those systems that punished you if you didn't know what you were doing. AoE was kind of whatever. You didn't really have to move much in Heaven's Word, so doing your 24 mans, your experts and whatnot, didn't really affect you too much in terms of the job's overall output. And it had Fire 4 when it was first introduced, so it was very cool, a new ability that did big boom. So I'll leave it at B. B for boom. I think I'll put it here as well for Stormblood. Casters got memed the fuck out of in Heaven's Word because of the Dragoon double range ninja comp, and that spread even to the floor, which is something I haven't mentioned up to this point. But even though most people will be fairly average and suck at this game, they listen very well to the opinions of the top, right? And you'll see it in party finders where things like Black Mage are excluded for 2 expansions in Party Finder because the players that are attracted to that job and the overall first impression of those players are ass, which is big true. If Black Mages are not using Fire 4, they're ass, like straight up. There's no way to be good without doing that. Or, you know, Blizzard mages, Thunder mages, Scathe mages, whatever you want to call them. Not using flare spam. Yeah, no, I'll leave it here. It was still very powerful when played right. But in the hands of the average person, I'd rather them not. I'd rather them play Red Mage. This still has the same problem as the other Black Mages, Shadowbringers, but like the other jobs in general, by the time you reach Shadowbringers, you kind of have an idea of what you want to do in the game. And I think at the floor level, for the most part, if you're playing a Black Mage, you kind of know what you're doing, and you do a lot of damage, even if you're shit, right? Because I've definitely seen cringy ass Reddit memes of people still talking about Fire 4 like it's the most amazing thing in the world and how it does infinite damage. So people have this idea that this job does damage, and that can only really stem from the fact that there must be somebody out there doing damage. So I'll let it rock an A. As a quick side note, fuck this job. I love Black Mage to death, but if you're gonna make another fucking 2.5 years of Fire 4, please, I can't. I'm not gonna rant on it. I'm not a fan of this job, even though it's my favorite. I hate Fire 4. Be more creative, damn it. Okay, physical range. Heaven's Word Machinist. It was designed around the Gauss Barrel, which was its casting stance, but it had a lot of movement tools and bullet utilization. If that doesn't really make much sense to you now because you didn't play Heavensward, I don't care. Just take my word for it. It played a lot better than Bard because of that. Because it was it was designed to move around with bullets versus Machinist is casting, so Bard also has to be casting, right? And everybody high five at the dev meeting. Very powerful, very tough job, I would say, because it was ping dependent. It had hypercharge and wildfire, which were pretty big for the job's damage, and because of how what's the word for it, you had to understand in your brain that your wildfire is everything, so you should be sticking everything in there, like all your buffs, hypercharge itself, and you need to have a good ping, so you need to have good execution of weaving off globals. For the floor, especially at this time, I don't think they were that great at it. However, people who played Machinist overall knew that and accepted the faults of being a caster, which is also like a big buff. It's a state of mind, it's not a buff or a nerf. I think it's just what it is. So for the Machinists that stayed, they understood, so they played well. And this job also got memed on in a good way because this job did a shit ton of damage. So if you're ever sitting at the cool kids table, even if you're ass, as long as you got the nice sneakers on or the cool backpack, people are gonna let you ride. This job still had hypercharge, kinda. No, it still did. Yeah, there's not so much I could say about it. It was good. It wasn't amazing in the hands of the average player, but it was good enough. And back then there was still refresh and that other thing that restored TP. Wait, no, TP wasn't a thing anymore in Stormblood. But refresh was really nice. I'll leave it there. I'm not gonna spend too much time thinking on it. This job is zero brain at all. You press your buttons. This is all about drill and air anchor, and the floor knows this. The problem with Machinist in general and why it's not an S DPS is because I don't think there are many, if any, S tier DPS. Actually, no, there's one. There's one for sure right now. I don't know about the others yet. We'll see as we move along. But this job just does a lot of damage. It's selfish, so it doesn't really buff the party, which is great for the floor. It means that they don't really need to focus on anyone or anything but themselves. Very simple rotation, one of the simplest in the game, but it is also very button mashy because of your reduced GCD timer in Wildfire. For the people that want to play Machinist, this job's great. I still don't think it's S. I don't think it sits with the ranks of the greats that are up here. But I also may be a little biased because I'm a tank main at heart, and I'm a simplicity lover. And I don't think this job, while very simple, is as simple as the jobs up here and their ability to simply do their job. Yeah, I'm not gonna say much more. All right, Heavensward Bard. Now, historically, I've been a Bard hater for the entirety of my life. There's nothing good to say about this fucking job, except that it did have TP and MP song. The bards that stuck it out complained, but they still played the job, right? But almost all the bards that I can recall, more often than not, sucked. Bards who stand away from the group, bards who do no damage, bards who don't play their songs. Foe's Requiem made you lose damage. What average person is going to use an ability and be like, yeah, I lost damage, I'm not doing that ever again? This job. Now, Stormblood Bard. This job was broken in terms of how good it was. S tier. Absolutely. This job did insane damage. It got its mobility back. It crit like a beast. It did so much fucking damage. It was disgusting. I hate this job. But I'll put it in A because it's still sort of hard to stick out as an average Bard player. You still suffer from the same issues that previous iterations of Bard suffer from, like not standing next to your healers to get healed for AoEs. Standing in AoEs, I am so baffled by the amount of times I look at the party list in either a 24-man or an 8-man and see that the people who die, the people who run away with stack markers on their fucking head are bards. This job attracts dumb. So it can never be S. Never. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. But it is very powerful in Stormblood. Shadowbringers, it retains its identity of moving around. It still retains its identity of standing and shit and dying. But it is physical range, and physical range in Shadowbringers are fucking hilarious. They are so bad, and they know it. God, do they know it? Because if they were decent in Stormblood, they knew how powerful they were and how shit they are now. And if they weren't good back then, they're still getting laughed at because people know how bad they are. It's not to their fault, right? The dev team, for whatever reason, decided that physical range is a support role, a quote unquote, and must do slightly less damage than the rest of the cast. And their big merit to the team is the plus 1% DPS that the team gets when the physical range slot is fulfilled in the party. If they didn't have that, you would see a lot more double melee, double caster, triple melee caster. Bards didn't really change too much going from Stormblood to Shadowbringers in terms of like what they were doing with their 3 songs. Some buttons got reduced. They lost a lot of support. They had amazing tools in Stormblood. They had Palisade, Nature's Min. Troubadour was affected by the song that you were in. There was some big brain stuff going on, but they dumbed it down, as they did for every job going into Shadowbringers. But a lot of people really do like Bard, and I imagine by the time they get to Shadowbringers, they have enough experience on their plate to know that just spamming heavy shot is not the thing they should be doing in AoE pools. Although you'll still see remnants of that old tried and failed game plan. Dragoon. So we have the melees left, yeah? Dragoon in Heaven's Word was sick. The aesthetic was amazing. Gearskogel, amazing. Personally, it's my favorite iteration of Dragoon because of the management system that you had with Gearskogel and your Blood of the Dragon gauge. And Shotgun Dragon, like how do you beat that? That shit is so cool. But because they were also part of the Cool Kids Club, aka being meta, because they put up piercing for the 2 range that were also godlike in this game. They were always valued, right? People were always going to be playing range, so you always needed a Dragoon bitch to put up the piercing. Because of the aesthetic, I'll put them in B. Come on, move over. I'll put them in B. Just because Dragoons also suffer from Bard syndrome, right? Where the players of that job are notoriously known for sucking ass, leaping into the air when there's an AoE under them, so they just die, flipping off arenas, losing Blood of the Dragon, which is pretty easy to do at this point because the jump from A Realm Reborn to Heaven's Word was pretty steep. So the learning curve and the fact that there were mistakes you could make that would fuck your rotation was a very new experience for the average player. Not to mention positionals, where if you did the wrong Fang and Claw, if you did the wrong positional at either the flank or rear, you lost a ton of potency. But the aesthetic of the job was amazing. And I feel that's a huge attraction point for players that look at Dragoon. So I'll leave it in B for now. Stormblood. I'll put it in B as well. I don't think it necessarily took off until Shadowbringers for the floor. It still had its jumps. It had damage. Oh, and it had tether. Fuck, tether. I totally forgot about tether. Dragon Sight. That's what it's called. They had a buff that they needed to apply to a party member in order to gain the bonus. And there wasn't the quality of life buff yet where you could just put it on yourself. So Dragoons would just straight up forget that this button exists. The ones that did remember it exists would put it on, their tank or their healer, whoever was standing close to the boss, because if it wasn't a melee partner that they had in a dungeon, then the caster or the range were, fucking off in the corner of the map, not receiving heals, just blasting on their own. Damage was great. It still retains the Dragoon aesthetic of just being a, jumpy, hard-hitting, slow DPS, but it still retains all its issues of, flipping off stage, jumping when you shouldn't be jumping. The gauge isn't so much of a problem anymore because they changed the way you interact with your Blood of the Dragon. Although you would lose it. That is big. So if you died at the wrong time, you lost your eye stats. And thinking about it, it makes me kind of want to readdress Stormblood Summoner, like putting it in B. But it's alright. We made our choice. Shadowbringer's Dragoon is a solid A. It's very hard to play this job wrong these days. At this point, if you're still standing in AoEs and dying and flipping off arenas and dying, you have decided this is your career path. You're not going to be doing anything else. Okay? Which is fine. I am A-okay with you just flipping and dying. Because you're okay with it. The job also got pretty simplified. Potencies were heavily adjusted so that when you put it on the wrong positional, it doesn't matter so much. Ninja. Heavensward Ninja. This was a cool kid's job. The job was very fucking powerful. It had 2 dots to keep up. You know, dots equal fun for the floor, right? Nope, they hate dots. It was cool. Mudgers were cool. I think a solid B. I can't see them being too amazing because Doton still exists and people unironically used it as single target. This job was filled with abilities to make errors on your own. And you need a job that plays itself in order to do well at the floor. Same deal here. TCJ was a nightmare for the floor. I'm not gonna really say too much more about it. Again, with melee in general, they're my least favorite role in the game because of how little they stick out. Except Samurai. Shadowbringers Ninja is pretty solid. It's gotten a lot simpler, especially after the rework that it received, where Mudges are on the GCD. Very simple job there. And outside of having to memorize what your Mudges do, at this point, with all the other jobs in Shadowbringers, if you're still playing Ninja, you kind of know what you're doing, right? I think you notice there's a pattern here with all the Stormblood residents sitting up in A and S tier. That's where Monk goes. Samurai on its first induction is great. Most samurais, if not all, floor samurais are gonna freestyle. A freestyle samurai feels amazing because you are chained to no rule. You are just blasting with whatever you feel is right. Madare here, Madare there. Put a dot up there when you remember. The job's solid. Its AoE in dungeons is also very solid, but it's pretty button bloaty, I would say, because you have gauges that you need to be dumping, so you're not overcapping. It's pretty, I don't know, there's a lot of buttons to press, I would say, versus the like 1 or 2 buttons for your AoE rotation and you're kind of done. I don't think it's a big deal. I feel like honestly, I'm overemphasizing how button bloaty it is, but I don't know. It just feels like you're pressing buttons. Damage solo was good. I can't really fault the floor anywhere else. I mean, if you were bad playing samurai, there was no job in the game where you weren't also going to be bad. So I'd rather have you on samurai, because at least that job naturally does damage. And of course, Shadowbringer Samurai, the king of freestyle. You can keep doing exactly what you're doing in Stormblood, but everything hurts more now, and you do more Madares per minute. Alright, this video's been going on for over an hour now, so let's just quickly squeeze out these last bad ones here. First off, Heavensward Paladin, so bad. The fact that people played Paladin unironically in Heavensward and stayed there for the 2.5 years that we had that expansion is just going to be in its own tier. Heavensward Paladin, this job was so bad. I cannot believe it got past QA. Let's see, how do we make another? Can we? No, that's just to move it up or down. Let's see, we'll do, okay, cool. Here we'll do, why do you exist here? Monk is my least favorite job in the game, and their players are also pretty bad. They've been wanting to do the same thing since A Realm Reborn, with small exceptions, right? I'm of course leaving out the top end stuff that made Monk really powerful, like a tornado kick rotation that was around briefly in Stormblood. The rework for Monk and Shadowbringers, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. I mean, it functions, right? But it's not. I don't know. When I imagine Final Fantasy, it's a game where you can do some cool ass shit because it is fantasy. And the coolest shit a monk is doing is aiming a Kamehameha downward as an off global. Brotherhood as an ability looks cool because of the flowers that, you know, the flower petals that shoot out and shit. But god damn, this job sucks, man. Why do you exist? This is such a waste of a slot. Be more creative. Come on. Yeah, I'll move Heavensward Monk down there too. Wait, we can change the color of this, right? We'll do gray. For this one too, we'll also do gray. And Summoner, I think this is the worst that Summoner's ever been in terms of a gameplay standpoint. And I don't think the dev team understands how this job is meant to be played. It's very powerful. Once again, don't get it twisted on that. And I understand people like the idea of Summoner just being this, you know, job that has a hodgepodge of tools that they use on a big rotation, right? Like 2-minute rotation. And it being focused around the demi summons is cool. The eggy actions being changed to GCD makes it a lot easier to manage your Ruin 4 stacks. Again, it has some good design choices, but a Summoner like Monk should feel more like the role that it's in a fantasy universe. Why, when I summon, and press Eggy Action 1, the carbuncle or the Ifrit Eggy does a flip or a slash. That is so boring. Yeah, we'll call this Can You Get Creative tier. All right. That's my list. Yoshi, I know you said you needed some help with new job actions. Too bad. I was working on it and then I saw this and I had to do this. So this is what you get. Take this for what you will. Make my boys better. Do something about physical range. They need help. Make sure Bard is still the shittiest job in the game. That's all I ask. All right. If you stayed this long watching, listening, thank you. I had a good time rambling a little bit. There'll be more videos in the future. Definitely a lot shorter than this one. I'm not cutting this one up. This is going to be a big chungus that's going up. God, why did I say that? Yeah. Next video soon. Maybe some more ARAMs. Maybe some more streams. I need to decide on what I want to play when I do stream. But yeah, again, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.